Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, it's been another red week across the board, but there's been some big news headlines, so we're going to dive into all the macro news as well as the crypto news. And before we get into it, just wanted to let everyone know our wishes with those in Townsville. Hope you're staying safe. I know we do have a lot of followers from up that way, so let us know in the comments below what's going on, if you're all okay. But the weather has been crazy lately. Tasmania, my home state, just recorded its hottest ever summer on record, and yet we have floods in other parts of Australia. So I'm not sure if that's climate change or part of the Earth's natural cycles. That's a debate for another day, but there's certainly been some wild weather, and I hope you're all staying safe. Now, into the crypto history as we always do. This week I really had a deep dive into the 4-year cycles that are driven around the halvening events, particularly for Bitcoin, but I really wanted to focus on Litecoin because that's the one where I don't think enough people are paying attention and it's only a few months away. So if you haven't seen that video, certainly check it out. And thanks to everyone in our members area. We've got over 1,200 people that are all helping each other out with the bear case scenarios, the bullish scenarios, finding trades in this market, other ways to make money, and really that just community feel of how we can help each other when crypto winter can be pretty mentally taxing. So nuggetsnews.com.au if you're interested in joining that community. On to the macro news. So it's official, Italy's economy is in recession, and it's one by one that we're seeing these countries that, you know, it started off as, it's just Venezuela, it's just Greece. And then one by one, we're getting to these bigger, reputable countries. We've got the yellow vests in a country like France. Now, who would have thought that could happen? And now Italy is in recession. There's all these debt restructuring talks. The can has been kicked down the road for a number of years. That's something that I've followed really closely. And even Germany, the powerhouse of the European economy, posts its weakest growth in 5 years. So you can't hide from this stuff, guys. The economies around the world are slowing down, and some of these, like Europe, are still in easing mode in terms of their money printing and interest rate policies. And this is what I've been so focused on. The central banks have missed an entire cycle, so we're heading down into that next recession, but they can't drop interest rates and print money. They're already doing that, and that is going to be the biggest driver of Bitcoin's price. It's going to get a lot of people interested in what went wrong, how do banks and money work, and I think it's going to send a lot of people down the crypto rabbit hole. On top of that, we're seeing central banks buying more gold than they have since 1967. Now, I've got a big special episode coming out about how to buy gold and silver. Is it best to get exposure through the miners or the metal? All that sort of thing this week. But last week I spoke about central banks being asked why they hold gold, and they sort of and say, it's just tradition. Watch what they do, not what they say. When the central banks themselves are buying more gold than ever before, we're seeing ex-central bankers that have left office come out and say, buy gold, there's something bad coming, we made the wrong decision. I don't think anyone can deny that there's a lot of uncertainty ahead and something big is coming. So waiting for clarity, and this is the big turning point that the Federal Reserve have made, that we've been waiting for. We called it months ago that the market will turn around once Wall Street win the arm wrestle. Wall Street, the markets were crashing, and they were all telling the Fed that we can't withstand higher interest rates. We don't want it. We want more money printing. We want lower interest rates, or we're going to throw a tantrum. And they threw their tantrum, and the Fed backed away. So the Fed have changed their policy. Their wording is now that, we're being patient. We're going to, observe the data and whatnot. But there's certainly more easing to come, and we can drop interest rates if we need to. And just a few weeks ago, they were talking about we're going to continue to raise interest rates. It's the strongest economy ever. And yet here we are at, 2%, same as in Europe, and they're already talking about having to go back down again. Now, traditionally, interest rates have dropped a few percent, maybe 5% as we head into a recession. So if that happens, does that mean interest rates in the US are going to be at negative 2%? And I certainly think that would just be another absolute canary in the coal mine, telling everyone to get into a hard currency like gold or Bitcoin. So we see all these headlines come out, and it's no coincidence. You know, Apple iPhone had terrible sales. We reported that they're going to stop reporting sales of phones and iPads and so on. But here we see these articles about they're out of the woods, even though it's bad, it's out of the woods. But it is all related to central banks. Central banks, whatever they are doing, is determining the share price at that macro level. So don't forget that, guys. And at the head of the GFC were people like Lloyd Blankfein. Now, I can't spend too much time on this because it makes me too angry. He was one of the execs at Goldman Sachs who knew that they were ripping their customers off. They had all the emails. I made a top 10 documentaries to watch. If you've watched those, you'll know that Lloyd Blankfein was one of the bad guys who got away with nothing, a slap on the wrist, and then he moves on to his next $1 million, billion-dollar position. The rich get richer, they don't get in trouble, and the markets move on. Now, I spoke about YouTube changing their algorithm and us maybe not being able to report on some of this slightly more conspiratorial stuff. But this week I made a video about plants, nature, and modern medicine. It's something I'm pretty passionate about as a pharmacist, and we had a good chat with our friend Charting Man Dan. And sure enough, this video got demonetized. So I'm not sure what to make of it, guys. I do want to continue to cover these topics, but I have submitted to YouTube asking for what I've done wrong. Why aren't we allowed to talk about plants being part of natural medicine? So into the crypto news, it was good to see that Kik are coming out to fight the SEC on their ICO ruling, and this is really going to set a precedent. If they can win this battle, I think it's really going to change a lot of the uncertainty around ICOs, and there's so many policymakers unsure whether to classify all ICOs as securities or whether to bring in new regulation. That square peg doesn't quite fit through a round hole. So I'm really interested. I know policymakers in so many different countries and regions of the world are still working out how it's best to treat these different ICOs and security blockchain-based projects. So Tron's up over 100% in a month, and can BitTorrent take it up further? We've spoken about this a lot on the channel, and there's a lot of emotion. So a lot of people are very passionate about Tron. A lot of people think that the BTT token is completely unnecessary. And so there's a lot of debate on Twitter at the moment. But as I posted, having a good understanding of the fundamentals and the technicals is what led us in our crypto community to have a big profitable month. So we made money on the way up on the Tron trade. And when it got too overheated and too excited, we shorted it and made money on the way down. So by having a good understanding of the fundamentals and the technicals, you can still make a lot of money. And I'm not sure how many people are sort of sitting there waiting patiently for the market to turn around. And if it goes sideways for another few months, invest in your education. Learn that you can still make money and prosper in these sideways bear markets by understanding the fundamentals. So thanks to everyone that sent me some kind messages. Those of you that got a few trades away, particularly on BitMEX. Those of you that like to trade Tron on leverage. So good news for Ripple holders, and this is another one that divides the community, but payment processor CoinGate adds support for Ripple. So look, I'm not really sure that that's going to put in a huge demand for XRP. I think if you're an XRP holder, you're really waiting for one of the banks to adopt the XRapid technology and say that they're going to hold XRP token and use XRP token regularly. That would be the bullish case for Ripple, for XRP token. But again, I think that's very separate to almost have to treat it separately to a cryptocurrency project in some ways. It's far more business and bank orientated. So Quadrix, another exchange going down. I think it's more than a coincidence. They owe customers $190 million, but the CEO, who sadly passed away, he had the private keys to $150 million. And again, there's lots of conspiracies going on. We saw Proof of Keys, the event just a few weeks ago, where you have to take your coins off exchanges. And again, it was a video that's educational, very important stuff, and people don't watch that. People only watch the clickbait headlines from different YouTubers, and I've already got messages from people saying that they had a heap of crypto on this exchange, and it's kind of like, why, guys? If you only can fork out $100 to get a ledger and you don't have any of these stresses. Now, if it's smaller coins and they don't quite have a wallet, that's part of the difficulty of cryptocurrency, and it's another reason why we personally recommend only ever investing 1%, maybe 2% in altcoins. The majority of my portfolio is in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I talk about that a lot in my members group. But it's very sad to hear these stories of people that have gone all in on random altcoins that don't even have a wallet to store them safely, and then the exchange goes under. So I'm sorry to anyone that is missing it, guys, but if you can, always have your cryptocurrency in your own custody. NEM was the other big story this week, and NEM's a really interesting one. They've been around for years. They're quite big in Japan, but they were just spending too much. And as a NEM rep myself, I know we used to hold meetups, and the NEM Foundation would give us some support as long as we're doing educational content. And I think there was too much of that community focus and not enough on the development focus. Now, the upgrade that we've been waiting on for a couple of years now, Catapult, is the layer 2 scaling solution. You can think of it as similar to, Bitcoin and Ethereum are working on their layer 2s. Now, this big upgrade was meant to be out in 2017 originally, and it's still not there. In the meanwhile, I've been spending all this money on building the community and getting people familiar with NEM. It's got some good capabilities, launching tokens and all that sort of thing, but it's just not happening. The upgrade, the actual building is just not happening, and that is pretty sad to see. So undergoing restructuring. Alex is the new female head of NEM, and I think she's a fantastic person, so I'm hoping she can turn it around. I certainly don't think it's the end for NEM at all. That they've got a lot of money set aside that gets drip fed to the foundation. So if the foundation gets on the right path and NEM launch Catapult, I certainly think it can be a powerhouse going forward. But it's definitely a sign of the bear market where we're currently at, with even projects that were in the top 5 at one stage, going under. Now, South Korea has decided they're going to keep their ICO ban, and this is from the Financial Services Commission, but one by one, we are going to see these people change their mind, I believe. So as soon as China gives a green light, South Korea are going to get FOMO. They're not going to want to see all those people move to that other country. Already seen them move to Malta. You guys know my thesis on that sort of stuff. I believe it's only a matter of time until they change their mind. Arbor. So we've done a video on Arbor, a fantastic project. This is one of the easiest ways to send money to another person by text message or by name. They've got their Bit10 products allowing you to invest in a basket of cryptocurrencies, and their CEO's coming out and saying that remittance at scale is going to be complex but successful, and this is their plan, being able to send cryptocurrency to anyone in the world simply by having them in your phone. And remittance is one of those huge use cases for cryptocurrency that they're working hard on. This is something that we've spoken about in terms of each country having their regulatory frameworks, and we're already seeing Malta attract crypto players. Now, there's plenty of people that are, skeptical and waiting to see what they're doing, if it's all legit, but we're already hearing stories every day of all these people and all this money that are moving to Malta, trying to get bank accounts, setting up, crypto accounts. So it's all happening there, guys. And I think this is even, a bit of jealousy from everyone else that's starting to see it actually play out in real life. Next up here is Charlie Lee going private. And a while ago, we made a video talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even Litecoin that are going to implement the best features of other coins. And that Litecoin becoming private is something that I think is very, very exciting, and Litecoin is going to act as a test net for adding all these other features before Bitcoin. They might even add different features, but fungibility is something that a lot of people don't understand. One coin not really having a history, so it can't really be blacklisted. That's the way you can kind of think of this. But if Litecoin becomes private, you'd have to think that it's going to gain a little bit of market share off all the other privacy coins because it has such a big community. Onto the Ethereum news. So the Ethereum developers have decided to delay that ASIC-resistant algorithm. And as you know, that there's a lot of people out there that want to build these ASICs to mine more cryptocurrency. Now, at the time, they have decided to push this back slightly until it undergoes third-party audit. And we saw recently they found a bug last minute. So before they implement this change so that Ethereum is resistant to that ASIC mining, this is simply undergoing a third-party audit. So while Ethereum want to move fast and break things, they're taking their time before implementing this one. This week we saw Wrapped Bitcoin launch, and a lot of people ask me, well, what's Wrapped Bitcoin? Why is what's the point of putting Bitcoin on Ethereum? And this is a pretty unpopular statement, what I'm about to say, but Ethereum has a lot of functionality, and I've spoken about this before, that even the good platform projects will effectively become sidechains for Ethereum. We can have, different proof of stake chains, different consensus rules. All of that can just act as a sidechain for Ethereum. And now we have Bitcoin. Wrapping Bitcoin just means you turn it into an ERC20 token, so that if you have a dApp and you'd love to use Bitcoin in it, you don't really have that capability at the moment. So by wrapping Bitcoin, it just means that Bitcoin takes on those features and functionality of an ERC20 token, and then we can use Bitcoin in different dApps and smart contracts. So again, this is pretty unpopular from people that consider themselves Bitcoin maximalists. They say there's no need for this, it's all junk, and Bitcoin's developing its own smart contract features. But if we try and stay unbiased and look at the facts, Ethereum is really paving the way for a lot of this progress. It's out there already. People are using wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. No, Ethereum 2.0. We've spoken about the new chain, the beacon chain. This still confuses people that there is going to be an entirely new Ethereum chain launch. Now, you don't have to worry. You don't have to do anything with your Ethereum tokens if you're currently a holder. I will make a video about all that, but it's good to see that they've kicked off phase 0, and it's relatively feature complete for that new Ethereum chain, that 2.0 with all these great scaling features and sharding and all that. They've put the first iteration out on GitHub, but as I said, this is phase 0, still very, very experimental. This week we saw SIBO refile that Bitcoin ETF. We spoke about it last week. They told us they, withdrew it because of the government shutdown, and they'd be back. And sure enough, they've already put in a new submission. I believe that gives them now until around October, second half of this year, for that final decision to come. Again, I'm not holding my breath too much for an ETF. I believe there's lots of other things that could spur a bull market. People are probably more excited about Backed or Fidelity, who have come out and said that they're in the final testing phase of launching the crypto trading and a custody platform, which is the really big one for those high net worth investors that want to put their trust in a name that they're familiar with. Now, I tweeted this out and it didn't get much traction, but Jake Shavinsky is an absolute gun when it comes to talking about all the legalities around ETFs and investment products. So I'd love to hear his insight over the CFTC's regulation over Fidelity compared to that of Backed, because a lot of people thought that Backed was able to self-regulate and just launch their own product, and that's not quite the case. And I just want to get some more granular information about whether or not Fidelity are awaiting the same approval, because if they are, then there's no point really saying that they're launching in March if they're still waiting on CFTC approval. So keep an eye on that. I'll continue to report back on that. Some big news this week, though, with Binance coming out and saying that we'll let you buy crypto with credit cards. And a few Australians have told me that this has worked. Now, different banks in Australia, such as Commonwealth, have stopped all credit card purchases. Doesn't matter who through, they won't let you purchase cryptocurrency on your credit card. Now, is going into debt and letting people buy crypto on credit card a good idea? Personally, it's one of the things that I don't think is wise. If you're overextending yourself, putting money you can't afford to lose, going into debt to buy cryptocurrency in a bear market, what are you going to do if it does go down to $1,000 and you've put $20,000 on a credit card while Bitcoin's a lot higher? So it's a dangerous game if you can afford to do it, and it's just that ease of doing it until you pay it off. That's good, but certainly opening the floodgates in terms of the possibilities for on-ramping people. As we know, Binance want to launch exchanges in every country around the world. So letting people buy on credit cards, let me know what you think in the description below. So Jack Dorsey, the Twitter founder, his Cash app is now the second most popular app on Apple. Sorry guys, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Now, that lets you pay in cryptocurrency, and the fact that that's trending is fantastic. But this week he was on Joe Rogan talking about the fact that he thinks that internet will have a currency and it's likely going to be Bitcoin. So check that interview out if you haven't already. But one thing that surprised me was the amount of dislikes on this. So saying that the internet's going to have a currency and talking about Bitcoin, I'm a bit surprised that of Joe's followers, this was so unpopular. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the comments below. Before we get into the price action, it's now officially the longest bear market ever. Now, if we look back, if we don't get new lows and we look back and the bottom was, a few weeks ago, I'm not sure if that still counts as this being the longest bear market ever, but February 2nd was that date. We have passed it. If you're still here, I believe you are going to be rewarded in the long run, doing all the education and refining your portfolio, investing in your own education. So well done to you guys, but let's have a look at the price. And look, last week we were really talking about this trend line. Whether or not it could come back and act as support would be the bullish scenario, but we got that, but we didn't get a strong push off. So big bear volume and no bullish showing up to give us that push up, particularly around this key turn date at the end of the month. It's been a pretty wimpy little bounce so far, guys. Now, what cycle bracket theory says is that if we break this low here, weakness could continue for the length of this bracket, which is until the end of February. Whether or not this trend line acts as support a second time round, but if we zoom out, it's really all about this weekly chart now. And the 200-week moving average did act as support with that decent bounce there, good volume, and we're right there now. So if we lose that level, it's bearish on the daily, it's pretty bearish on the weekly, and one would have to think that we're heading down to test 3,000 or even the high twos if that happens. Now, the bullish scenario is we get a strong bounce again off the 200-week moving average, and then we do get this push up a bit later than we thought, but still starting for this cycle bracket until the end of February, where we've got our slower moving averages coming into play that are certainly going to act as resistance. I can't see us getting too far above 4,000, even with a strong move, testing these old highs on the weekly before pulling back and catching our breath and seeing if we can get a second leg higher. So that's it for today, guys. Head to nuggetsnews.com.au if you want to join our community. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.